Mad Mike Calvert and his elite Chindits, who specialized in deep penetration operations behind Japanese lines in Burma, were attacking a heavily dug enemy position in March of 1944. Calvert, already a rising legend in the UK due to his fierce bravery and unconventional tactics, was deeply adored and admired by his men. That day, rain and mud were everywhere, but he had orders to accomplish. Noticing the enemy was focused on engaging another unit, Mad Mike, honoring his nickname, opted to try something different. Fixing a bayonet on his weapon, he ordered a full-on bayonet charge. The Chindits commander then sprinted toward the enemy by himself while bullets flew around him. He then stopped and shouted, quote, "Charge! What the hell do you think you're doing? Charge!" From machine gunners, mortar teams, and auxiliary units, all the troopers charged, bayonets fixed, behind their fearless, mad commander. Future British Army brigadier and World War II hero James Michael Calvert was born in 1913 and raised in Rohtak, India, the adventurous and colorful land vividly described by Rudyard Kipling. As an integral part of the United Kingdom, India was the jewel of the vast and rich British Empire. British troops and wealthy men from the UK were stationed there to manage the territory. When young Mike came of age, he left the jungles of India for the rainy homeland to be educated at Bradfield College and later the Royal Military Academy at Woolwich, South London, once he decided the career of arms was his calling. In the early 1930s, a young James Michael Calvert was commissioned into the Royal Engineers. As the Army's middleweight boxing champion, Calvert displayed fierce prowess, defining his future military tactics. His quest for knowledge took him to St. John's College, Cambridge, where he delved into mechanical engineering, only to be drawn back into active service amidst the rising tensions in Asia. Posted to the Hong Kong Royal Engineers in 1934, Calvert's eyes were opened to the horrors and ambitions of the Imperial Japanese Army. First in Shanghai, then in the atrocities of the Nanking Massacre. These harrowing sights convinced him of the looming threat of Japanese imperialism. When World War finally erupted in September 1939, Calvert's engineering skills were immediately used in the Norwegian campaign's snow-laden terrains. The seasoned engineer was then dispatched to the training grounds of Hong Kong and Australia, where he sharpened the lethal skills of commando units, teaching them the art of demolition. Mike's collaboration with Frederick Spencer Chapman led to the formation of Australia's first commando companies. His journey took him next to Burma, where, as the commander of the Bush Warfare School, he prepared a new generation of men for the brutal guerrilla warfare that lay ahead in China's dense jungles. Calvert led the raids against Japanese-occupied Henzada, Burma, when Rangoon fell to the unstoppable empire of the rising sun during the first days of 1942. For this daring operation, Mike and the commandos decided to conduct the raid employing riverboats to convince the Japanese troops that Australian reinforcements were on the way to reconquer Burma, despite being the only resistance left in the region alongside other commandos. Following the success of this challenging but successful mission, Calvert linked up with rising legend Major General Ord Wingate, the creator of the Chindit Deep Penetration Forces, that, as the name implied, would conduct one-way missions deep inside enemy territory to disrupt the supply lines of the enemy. Wingate and Calvert shared the same ideas, leading to a quick, strong bond between both men. Wingate had already made a name for himself in Palestine with the formation of the Night Squads, Jewish guerrillas that fought the Arabs. Calvert, already renowned for his exploits with his commandos, became a valuable asset for the Chindits. The legendary name paid homage to the Chinta, a mythical beast that guarded Burmese temples. While Wingate prepared his operations for Burma, Calvert and his commandos were dispatched to the Goktek Viaduct close to Maimo to guard it from the Japanese. Upon his return, Calvert was recalled to India, where the unorthodox Wingate had been given the green light for his deep penetration operations in Burma. Thus, Operation Longcloth, the first Chindit operation, was born in 1943. The objective was simple: begin conducting long-range operations behind enemy lines to wreak havoc among the Japanese garrisons. Calvert was given command of one column to set out from Tammu in northern India to decimate the enemy. Soon, the Chindits became the rising stars of the British Empire due to their unique skills and reckless way of fighting in and out of the enemy territory. The aftermath of the successful operation, which demanded the very best of every soldier, including Calvert, earned him the Distinguished Service Order for his plentiful demolitions that destroyed Japanese lines of communication. Wingate was given command of 6 brigades and the 1st Air Commando, an air wing comprising several light and heavy transport aircraft with glides. The 3rd Indian Division, or the Chindits, was now officially recognized. With additional air support that could supply the Chindits inside enemy territory, Calvert and Wingate launched Operation Thursday to open a second front in Burma. He made the most of his new aircraft and gliders. Wingate and Calvert airdropped their men behind Japanese lines to establish several vital points that Allied aircraft would constantly resupply to keep up the fight against the Japanese army. In 1 week of March 1944, Calvert and Wingate managed to land over 9,000 men and over 250 tons of supplies to engage the enemy from the rear. Mike Calvert, commanding the 77th Indian Infantry Brigade, spearheaded the assault into the Japanese rear with ruthless efficiency, earning him the moniker Mad Mike after conducting a bayonet charge against entrenched Japanese on a sunken road. The ground was uneven. The enemy was on a steep hill with a pagoda and firing against an Allied unit. Thinking on his feet, Mad Mike opted for a bold frontal assault. Like a Victorian soldier, Calvert shouted "Charge!" and ran down the hill, leading from the front. Midway through the charge, Mad Mike noticed some of his men stayed behind. Thus, he abruptly stopped and shouted at them with fierce determination, quote, "Charge! What the hell do you think you're doing?" So they charged, machine gunners, mortar teams, all officers, everybody on that hill. A bloody melee occurred, with friend and foe engaging each other with katanas, bayonets, pistols, and hand-to-hand combat. The Japanese retreated while calling Mad Mike's troops dirty, hairy bastards. When the lethal proximity combat came to an end, the hill was filled with fallen soldiers. Mad Mike stared at them with a grin, telling his men, quote, "If things are bad for us, remember they are probably much worse for the enemy." Days later, Mad Mike and his Chindits secured a position near Malu that became known as the White City due to the white supply drop parachutes surrounding the location. Seeking to eradicate the survivors, the Japanese launched several attacks, with the last and most violent wave attacking the Chindits during the pitch-black darkness of March 21st. Throughout the night, close-quarters fighting between the two parties left the men exhausted, with 2 Japanese machine guns pinning down the Chindits defending their position until flamethrowers pushed them back from the defensive perimeter. When the enemy attacks were seized, the area was littered with the bodies of over 1,000 Japanese attackers. The triumph of the 77th Brigade at White City marked a great success for the unit. But their greatest challenge awaited. In May 1944, Calvert led his men through relentless monsoon rains toward Mogong, a key supply route for Japanese forces battling friendly Chinese divisions. The capture of Mogong would be a strategic blow, potentially leading to the fall of the vital town of Myitkyina. Calvert's journey was filled with difficulties. An attempt to rescue the embattled 111th Brigade of Blackpool was hindered by the inaccessible Namyang River, augmented by torrential rains. Undeterred, Mad Mike and the 77th Brigade continued their arduous march. Despite suffering exhaustion, rampant malaria, typhus, and other diseases, and a stark disadvantage in firepower against a deeply entrenched enemy, Calvert's men ventured into enemy territory without the promised Chinese support. Capturing Mogong was far from easy, and Mad Mike knew it all too well. He knew he would ask the most of his men, and many would perish. But orders were orders, and the lightly armed Chindits charged into battle against heavily dug-in Japanese forces. The 77th Brigade did not hesitate and fought with valor in vicious close-quarters combat, where the Allied Gurkhas excelled with their unique kukri knives. Despite effectively using flamethrowers, grenades, and explosives against the enemy, the Japanese fought fiercely. Not even the continuous strafing runs of American Mustangs were enough to eradicate the enemy threat. As usual, Calvert and his men led by example, charging in front of their men, leading to acts of courage that inspired the troops. Nonetheless, their casualties were tremendously high. Tired and consumed by disease, some of the men gave up, firing at the enemy carelessly. During the night, British patrols attacked Japanese fortifications with grenades, ambushing the enemy and taking their food supplies. Still, it was not a walk-on part for the Chindits. The trees were full of enemy snipers and machine gun nests that often took down entire platoons. Yet the Chindits pressed forward, no matter what. Fighting over 3,500 entrenched enemies with over 2,500 soldiers led to severe casualties. Only 550 men were combat effective, with more than 250 deceased and 500 wounded. Pillbox by pillbox, Mad Mike Calvert and the 77th Brigade closed in against the enemy with the support of a Chinese regiment. By June 25th, the surviving Japanese fled after the Chindits attacked the last defensive line, Mogong's railway embankment. After 16 days of fighting, the ordeal ended, and Mad Mike and his men were victorious. Nonetheless, Calvert was soon filled with wrath after he was briefed that Stillwell, the The American officer who had dispatched the support regiment had claimed the Chinese had solely captured the town. After sharing some strong words with Stilwell at HQ, the American officers told him, quote, "Calvert, those were strong signals you sent." Mad Mike responded, quote, "You should have seen those my brigade major would not let me send." Calvert had avenged his men and brought the Burma campaign to an end. The sacrifices at Mogang left a lasting mark on his life, with Mad Mike referring to the battle as a mini Passchendaele, quoting British hero Wellington, who once said, quote, "The next great misfortune to losing a battle is to gain such a victory as this." Following his recovery, Mad Mike was appointed as an officer with the Special Air Service, or SAS, and given command of a brigade to lead them in Europe. Calvert and his SAS operators were tasked with capturing several Dutch canals and then providing reconnaissance for the Canadian 4th Armored Division as it marched toward Germany. After the war ended, Calvert formed the Malayan Scouts, but peacetime challenges soon emerged. Known for their lack of discipline, the Scouts reflected Calvert's own struggles with heavy drinking. A regular breakfast in the mess had become a double brandy with no eggs, a sign of his decline. This behavior drew severe backlash from the military. Recalled to England, Mad Mike was assigned to Soltau in northern Germany in October 1951, an apparent demotion for the war hero. Within 9 months, he faced a court-martial and was found guilty of inappropriate behavior with young men in his unit. The war hero resorted to writing his experiences in Burma to ease his mind and make some money, but it was not enough. Mad Mike failed to make a career as an engineer, and alcoholism consumed him. He was forced to sell his valuable medals to make a living before losing his life in 1998, forgotten by the military he had served with so much dedication.